Hey CrossFit Youth, welcome to Wednesday night cross training. As you can see, I'm just kind of out on the back porch today. The weather's nice, just relaxing. Got a day off, and I said, well, I'll just do the lesson out here this week. So you may hear a chicken in the background, or got my puppy up here with me. He might make an appearance. He might walk across the screen. I don't know, so we'll see. If you've watched the last couple of lessons, you know that we've been talking about peer pressure. And peer pressure is something that all of us face. And if you remember from the last couple of lessons, I said that, peer pressure, we talk so much about peer pressure being something that teenagers deal with, and in some cases children, but really peer pressure lasts your whole life. Even through your adulthood, you'll face peer pressure. So teenagers, not to discourage you, but I know that you face peer pressure on a daily basis at school and on social media and with your friends, and maybe sometimes even at home. But one thing you can do is learn how to face that peer pressure and deal with that peer pressure now, so that when you do face it in later years, not only now but in later years, you know how to fight it, you know how to deal with it, you know how to make your decisions that you need to make when you're faced with peer pressure. So you may remember that the title of this series is Under the Influence, Navigating the Pressure to Conform. And the title of this week's lesson and next week's is Who Influences You? Who influences you? I want you to think about that just a minute. Who influences you? I guarantee you've got some names in your mind right now of who influences you. Now, influence can be a good thing, and we'll hear a little bit about that tonight. Influence, there's positive influence and there's negative influence. Obviously, with our topic of peer pressure, we're mainly focusing on the negative influence and how to deal with that. But we'll talk a little bit tonight about the positive influence as well. The sticky statement for tonight's lesson and next week's lesson is, if you don't flush it out, you'll flesh it out. I'm going to read that again. Think about that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. If you don't flush it out, you'll flesh it out. So let's get right into the lesson here. So in the first lesson of this series, we learned what empowers peer pressure. And we were challenged not to fear our peers. Remember that from the last 2 weeks. Remember the example of the Apostle Peter. He was susceptible to the power of peer pressure. Remember, he failed several times. And then he learned how to deal with the fear of those around him, what they may do or what they may think. And he learned how to deal with that, and he was able to succeed in standing up against peer pressure in his later years. But today we want to challenge you to recognize ways that in which you've been damaged. You've damaged your testimony by giving in to peer pressure. And how to take the necessary steps to rebuild your character and rebuild your testimony as you commit to walk wisely instead of in the fear of your peers. Here's the thing. If you don't remove the negative influences from your life, then you'll begin to flesh out the things that they are telling you to do. Now, to flesh out means that you begin to live something out or to follow it. It goes from just being a thought in your mind to turning into an action, something that you actually do because of the negative influences in your life. And if you're not careful, you will flesh out the things that really need to be flushed out. Okay, so by fleshing out, we mean that you start doing the actions of those influences around you. You flesh it out. Okay, but let's talk about flushing it out. All right, so have you ever got something in your eye, like a little piece of dirt or something that was bothering your eye? Well, what do? Well, sometimes you can just take your finger and just kind of move it around and you can get it out. But sometimes that don't work, and what do you have to do? You have to flush it out, right? You have to go stick your head under the water faucet or get a glass of water and pour through your eye, or maybe some eye drops, a little bottle of eye drops, and you hold it over your eye and you squirt it in there, or you let that water run through there and you flush that thing out. That piece of dust or dirt or whatever is in your eye, you flush it out. If you choose to ignore the problem of the thing in your eye, it could cause permanent vision damage, right? If you value your eyesight and you don't want to deal with the discomfort and the pain that you're feeling because it's in there, then you have to flush it out. Okay? I remember when Garrett was, I don't know, probably 10, 11, 12 years old, one of his eyes started getting real red and irritated looking, and there was a spot in his eye that was like, it almost looked like a little blood blister. So, I looked at it and couldn't figure out what was going on. So I said, we need to get you to the eye doctor. And so we took him to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor looked at his eye through their little machines, that magnifies it. And what it was a piece of a wing from a fly or a mosquito or something, or a gnat that had, maybe a gnat flew in his eye and he went to wipe it and he got the gnat out, but there was a little piece of the wing left in his eye. And what happened is it stayed there, and it almost like it attached itself to his eye, and he could not get it out. And so the doctor, what did he do? He put eye drops in it, and he flushed it out. He had to get a little tool, and once he run the liquid through there several times, it kind of loosened it up, and he was able to take his little tool and pick it out of his eye, and then he flushed it out some more, and it healed right up. So if you leave that in there, then it will destroy your eye. It will have very negative consequences. And that's what we're talking about with negative influences in our life. If we don't flush it out, we'll wind up fleshing it out. We'll wind up acting like the negative influences that are in our life. So the same is true with negative peer pressure. You have to flush it out before you begin to flesh them out. And to put it bluntly, if you don't remove the influence, you will follow the influence. Remember our sticky statement, if you don't flush it out, you will flesh it out. So the point that we're going to focus on tonight is we must remove negative sources of peer pressure in our life. And we're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. I've already got it opened here in my Bible. 1 Corinthians 15:33. It says, "Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners." Now, that's in King James Version, so let me break that down a little bit. Evil communications corrupt good manners. What that is talking about is evil occasions, evil influences, evil interactions corrupt good manners. Now, that manners there really means moral habits, okay? Activities that you do in your daily life, moral habits. So, evil occasions, evil influences corrupt good moral habits. Okay? So you actually will wind up having the same evil desires as those bad influences around you, is what that scripture's saying. Sinful habits are easily learned when you surround yourself with people who practice those sinful habits. Because, and this is another way to say that verse, bad company ruins good morals. Have you ever heard that? That's an old saying that a lot of people say. Bad company ruins good morals. In other words, if you don't flush it out, you'll flesh it out. When the company that we keep is corrupt, then we begin to corrupt and destroy our own character. It's always easier for someone to pull you down when you're surrounded by a crowd that's moving in a negative direction. And when that's the case, you tend to be controlled by the crowd, or at least a follower of the crowd. Now, not always, because I know that there's a few of you that that are in our youth group that you know, you're going to stand for what you believe in, no matter what the crowd says, and that's a good position to take, especially or really only when it's the right one. Sometimes we take stands for something that we really believe in, and we find out later that, well, we weren't quite right about that. We were wrong. So that's a good standard to live by, but we need to make sure that we're focused on the right thing, okay? To not be controlled or be followers of the crowd. Now let's go to Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20, and I've got it marked here in my Bible. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20. Proverbs has got a lot of good like one-liners that are really good for us to live by. So if you ever want like a lot of, it's a funny thing, but you know, we say Confucius say so and so. Well, Confucius had a lot of proverbs that he made. Benjamin Franklin has a lot of one-liner, good advice. Sometimes it's not so good advice, but a lot of moral values to live by in like one sentence by sentence. And that's kind of how Proverbs is. So let's see what Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20 says. He who walks with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Okay? So sinful habits are easily learned when you surround yourself with people. That's not where I'm supposed to be reading. Let me go to the right spot here. Walking with wise people will help us be wise, but walking with foolish people doesn't simply make us a fool along with them, but it puts us on a destructive path. Okay, so let's go read that verse again and see what it says. He who walks with wise men shall be wise. So wise influences around us have an impact on our life, and we will learn from those people, and we'll grow because of those people, and because they are wise, we will become more wise. But listen to the second part. But a companion or friend of fools shall be destroyed. Now the first part says he who's a friend with wise people will become wise, but the second one didn't say whoever's a friend with a fool will be a fool. Although that's the implication, it takes it a step further. Not only will he be a fool just like his friends, but he will be destroyed. So we see the path that you take if you have the wrong friends, if you have the wrong influences around you. The righteous should be careful about who they choose as friends, because the way of the wicked can lead them astray. If you don't flush it out, you'll flesh it out. All right, so we need to really take a serious look at our life and the type of people with whom we associate. Are you under the influence of a negative person, of a negative influence, of negative peer pressure? Are you under the influence of that? If so, it's time to remove negative sources of peer pressure. You have to make a decision today. And you're going to make a decision. If you're listening to this, you're either going to decide to keep going the way that you're going and keep those negative influences in your life, or you're going to decide to make a change and separate yourself and remove yourself from those negative influences. So remember our sticky statement. If you don't flush it out, you will flesh it out. You will become like those influences around you. We saw that in the proverb that we just read. And here's what we're going to talk about next week. This is the end of the lesson here. It's not good enough just to remove negative sources of peer pressure. Yeah, that's the first step. That we need to make that step, and we need to decide to do that today. But that's not enough just to remove those negative influences. Once you remove the negative sources of peer pressure, you need to replace sinful habits with righteous living. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. I think all this moisture in the air's got to my throat. That's where we're going to pick up next week. So you don't want to miss next week's lesson. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And I hope you learned something from it. You know, I don't do this every week to be put on YouTube, to be put on Facebook. I don't do this every week for people to watch these videos or listen to this teaching and think, oh, you know, he's a great teacher, or, you know, it's kind of boring, or whatever. That's not why I'm doing this. The reason that I do what I do and put these videos out here for y'all to watch is to be a positive influence in your life, for you to learn from the wise words that the Bible teaches us, the wise words of God, so that not just y'all, but I too can learn from the Word of God, and to be able to not only change our own life, but to be able to be a positive influence and to help change the lives of those people around us. So thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with another lesson. And just as a reminder, for those of y'all who stuck around for the end of the lesson, the first Wednesday in October, we will start meeting at the church again for youth. So the first Wednesday of October. So don't forget that. Hope to see y'all then in person. We're going to have a good time when we get together. I love y'all, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.